It was December 16th, 2025 at 2:47 a.m. when an overwhelming burden I couldn't shake, a restlessness that felt like divine urgency pressing against my chest, drove me to the waterfall overlook deep in the rainforest preserve outside San Juan. And there, surrounded by the deafening roar of cascading water plunging 300 feet into a moonlit pool below, mist rising like incense through ancient ferns and ceiba trees draped in Spanish moss, the air thick with moisture and the scent of wet earth and night-blooming flowers, Jesus appeared beside me on that moss-covered stone ledge and revealed that the 12 signs of miracle season are already manifesting in the lives of those marked for breakthrough before 2026, but most believers are completely blind to them. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked. I need you to do something right now before we go any further. Drop your prayer request in the comments below. I don't care how impossible it seems. I don't care how long you've been waiting. Type it out. Jesus told me specifically that someone reading this right now is about to receive their answer, but you have to participate in what God is doing here. This isn't entertainment. This is spiritual warfare, and your engagement matters in the realm of the Spirit. And if you're a true believer, if you're tired of watered-down Christianity and you're hungry for authentic encounters with the living God, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell, because what I'm about to share over these next 4 nights is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about how God moves in miracle seasons. YouTube's algorithm tries to hide content like this. They don't want this message getting out. But when you subscribe and engage, you're fighting back in the spiritual realm. Some of you know me as the actor who portrays Jesus in The Chosen. That role has been the greatest honor of my life, but I need you to understand something. What I'm sharing with you now has nothing to do with a television show. This is real. This happened to me. This is my testimony, and I'm risking my reputation, my career, everything by sharing this with you because Jesus commanded me to speak. Let me take you back to that night. I couldn't sleep. For 3 days, I'd been experiencing this growing sense of urgency, like something was about to shift in the spiritual atmosphere. I'd wake up at odd hours with scriptures running through my mind, with faces of people I'd never met flashing before my eyes, with this overwhelming sense that God was about to do something unprecedented before the year ended. That night, technically early morning, I gave up trying to sleep. I got in my car and just started driving. I didn't have a destination. I just knew I needed to get alone with God, away from the city lights, away from the noise, away from everything. The Holy Spirit directed me through winding roads that cut through the rainforest, roads I'd never traveled before. The darkness was absolute, except for my headlights cutting through the mist that hung low over the jungle. I parked at a trailhead I didn't even know existed. The sign read, Cascada de la Revelación, Revelation Falls. Even that felt prophetic. I grabbed my flashlight and started hiking. The night sounds of the rainforest surrounded me, coqui frogs singing their 2-note song, the rustle of leaves as nocturnal creatures moved through the canopy, the distant thunder of water that grew louder with every step. The temperature was perfect, about 70 degrees, but the humidity made everything feel alive, pulsing. My shirt clung to my skin. Every breath tasted like rain and earth and something wild, something primordial. The beam of my flashlight caught the gleam of enormous leaves, the twisted roots of strangler figs, the sudden flash of eyes in the darkness that disappeared as quickly as they appeared. I hiked for 20 minutes, following the sound of the waterfall until the trail opened onto a stone overlook. And that's when I saw it. The waterfall was magnificent, illuminated by a 3/4 moon that hung low in the sky, its light filtered through layers of mist and spray. The water fell in sheets of silver, crashing into the pool below with such force that I could feel the vibration through the stone beneath my feet. The mist rose up like a living thing, catching the moonlight, creating rainbow halos in the darkness. I stood there at the edge, my hands gripping the smooth stone railing that some forgotten builder had carved decades ago. The roar of the water was so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts, which felt like a gift. I just wanted to be present. I just wanted to hear from God. That's when the temperature dropped. I'm talking about a sudden, dramatic shift. In the span of maybe 10 seconds, it felt like the temperature fell 20 degrees. My breath became visible in the air. The mist from the waterfall seemed to glow brighter. And then I felt it, that unmistakable presence that I've only experienced a handful of times in my life. That sense of holiness so intense it makes your knees weak and your heart race and every hair on your body stand up. I turned to my left, and he was standing there. Jesus, not as I portray him in The Chosen, not as artists have painted him, but more real than anything I've ever seen, more solid and present and alive than the stone beneath my feet or the water crashing behind me. His presence was overwhelming, terrifying and comforting at the same time. His eyes held galaxies. His face was both fierce and tender. He was wearing simple robes that moved in a wind I couldn't feel, and there was light emanating from him, not like a special effect, but like he was the source of light itself. I fell to my knees. I couldn't stand. The stone was wet and rough beneath me, but I didn't care. Lord, I managed to whisper, though my voice was lost in the roar of the waterfall. But he heard me. He always hears us. He looked at me with such intensity that I felt naked, exposed, every hidden thing laid bare. But there was no condemnation in his eyes, only purpose, only urgency. When he spoke, his voice cut through the sound of the water like it didn't exist. I heard him not just with my ears, but in my chest, in my bones, in the deepest part of my spirit. Jonathan, he said, I've brought you here because you're going to deliver a message that my people desperately need to hear. They're standing at the threshold of miracle season, but most of them don't recognize the signs. They're looking for burning bushes when I'm showing them small shifts. They're waiting for parted seas when I'm already making ways they can't see. Time is running out, and they need to know what to look for. I was trembling. The mist from the waterfall had soaked through my clothes, or maybe it was sweat, or maybe I was just shaking so hard everything felt wet. I don't understand, I said. What signs? What are they missing? He turned and looked out over the waterfall, and when he did, something impossible happened. The water began to slow. Not stop, but slow, like someone had adjusted the speed of reality itself. The individual droplets became visible, suspended in air, each one catching the moonlight, millions of them creating a curtain of liquid diamonds between us and the pool below. Look, he said, and I looked. And in those suspended droplets, I began to see images, faces, moments, lives. I saw a woman in Minnesota who'd been praying for her marriage for 7 years. She was sitting at her kitchen table at that exact moment, 3 a.m. her time, crying, feeling like God had abandoned her. But in the vision, I saw something she couldn't see. I saw angels surrounding her house. I saw chains breaking in the spiritual realm. I saw her husband's heart beginning to soften, even though he was asleep in the next room. The breakthrough was 48 hours away, but she was about to give up. She's experiencing sign number 1, Jesus said. The intensification of desperation right before deliverance. When my people are closest to their breakthrough, the enemy always intensifies the attack. He makes them feel more hopeless than ever because he knows his time is short. But most of my children misinterpret this. They think the increased pressure means they're going the wrong direction. They don't realize that the darkest hour truly does come just before the dawn. The image shifted. I saw a young man in Nigeria, a pastor of a small church who'd been believing God for resources to build a community center. He'd been mocked, told he was foolish, told to give up and be realistic. In the vision, I saw him receiving a phone call. I saw the shock on his face. A donor he'd never met was about to fund the entire project, and the call was coming in 72 hours. Sign number 2, Jesus said, and his voice carried both joy and sorrow. Divine connections aligning in unexpected ways. I'm orchestrating meetings, phone calls, chance encounters that are anything but chance. But my people are so locked into their own plans and timelines that they miss the divine appointments I'm setting up. They're looking for help from the sources they expect, so they're not available when I send help from the sources they never imagined. I was weeping now. I couldn't help it. The beauty of what I was seeing, the intricate way God was moving in lives all over the world, the tragedy of how much was being missed, it was overwhelming. Lord, I said, why are you showing me this? Why me? He turned back to me, and the water resumed its normal speed, the roar returning, the mist swirling. He knelt down in front of me, which undid me completely. The King of Kings, kneeling on wet stone in front of a broken actor at 3 a.m. in a rainforest. He put his hand on my shoulder, and the warmth that flooded through me drove away every bit of cold, every bit of fear, every bit of doubt. Because you know what it's like to wait, he said. You waited years for the chosen. You waited through rejection and obscurity and doubt. You understand the season of hiddenness that precedes breakthrough, and because you've portrayed me, people will listen when you speak about me, but they need to understand that what I'm revealing to you is not fiction. This is reality. This is urgent. He stood and helped me to my feet. The stone beneath us was solid, but I felt like I was standing on holy ground, like Moses at the burning bush. Over the next 3 nights, Jesus said, I'm going to show you all 12 signs. I'm going to reveal to you how to recognize miracle season, how to position yourself for breakthrough, and what the enemy is doing to keep my people from stepping into what I have for them. But Jonathan, you need to understand something. He paused, and the weight of his next words pressed into the atmosphere like a physical force. Not everyone who hears this message will receive it. Not everyone is meant to. There are those who are marked, chosen, set apart for what's coming in 2026. Those people will recognize truth when they hear it. They'll feel the witness of my spirit. They'll know they're meant to see this message at this exact moment. But there are others who are comfortable in their lukewarm faith, who don't really want breakthrough because breakthrough requires change. They'll scroll past, they'll mock, they'll ignore, and they'll miss their season. A gust of wind suddenly swept across the overlook, warm and strong, carrying with it the scent of night-blooming jasmine. The trees around us bent and swayed. The mist from the waterfall swirled into new patterns. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I was being commissioned for something that would cost me. I'll tell them, I said. I'll tell them everything you show me. Jesus smiled then, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds, like every good thing you've ever felt concentrated into a single expression. I know you will, he said. That's why I chose you. He began to fade then, not disappearing all at once, but gradually, like mist dissipating in sunlight. But his voice remained, echoing in my spirit even after I could no longer see him. Tomorrow night, he said. Same place, same time. Be ready. What I'm going to show you will break your heart and fill you with hope in equal measure. And then he was gone. I stood there for another hour as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. The waterfall continued its eternal song. The rainforest around me woke up, birds beginning their morning calls, howler monkeys roaring in the distance, the whole jungle coming alive with light and sound. But I was different, changed, marked. I'm recording this message because Jesus commanded me to. I don't care if people think I'm crazy. I don't care if this costs me opportunities or reputation. The people who are meant to hear this will hear it. The people who are marked will recognize the truth in these words. If you're still reading this, if you've made it this far, that means something. It means you're hungry for more than surface-level faith. It means you're tired of waiting for breakthrough and you're ready to understand how God actually moves in miracle seasons. I'm going to be completely honest with you. What Jesus shows me tomorrow night is going to challenge everything you've been taught about patience and timing and God's will. It's going to upset religious people. It's going to seem too good to be true to skeptics, but to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, it's going to unlock something that changes everything. Drop a yes, Jesus in the comments if you're committed to watching tomorrow night's message. I need to know who's really with me on this journey, who's hungry enough to keep showing up, who's desperate enough for breakthrough that they're willing to have their comfortable theology challenged. And I'm going to ask you again, leave your prayer request in the comments. Be specific. Be bold. Jesus told me that before this 4-part series is complete, someone watching is going to receive a miracle that defies natural explanation. Why not you? Why not now? Tomorrow night, I'll be back at the waterfall. Jesus is going to reveal signs 3 through 6, and he's going to show me the warfare that's been keeping people from recognizing their miracle season. He's going to expose the lies that the enemy has planted in the church about breakthrough and timing and worthiness. This is urgent. We're 15 days from 2026, 15 days from the threshold of something unprecedented. If you've been waiting for a sign that your season is about to shift, this is it. You weren't supposed to find this video by accident. You were led here. You were marked for this message. I'll see you tomorrow night. Same time, same place. Be ready. The waterfall is waiting. Jesus is waiting. Your miracle season is waiting. Don't miss this. I didn't sleep at all that day. How could I? After what I'd witnessed, after what Jesus had revealed, after standing in his presence at that waterfall overlook, everything else felt hollow, insignificant. I tried to rest. I laid down. I closed my eyes. But every time I did, I saw those suspended water droplets, each one containing a life, a story, a miracle waiting to unfold. I saw the woman in Minnesota, the pastor in Nigeria. I saw their faces with a clarity that shouldn't have been possible. By the time evening came on December 17th, I was exhausted, but electrified. My body was tired, but my spirit was more alive than it had ever been. I knew I had to return to the waterfall. Jesus had said tomorrow night, same place, same time, and I wasn't about to miss the second encounter. I want to pause here and acknowledge something. The comments from last night's message have been pouring in, and I've been reading them. Thousands of prayer requests, thousands of people crying out for breakthrough in their marriages, their finances, their health, their children. I see you. Jesus sees you, and I'm telling you right now, if you felt compelled to leave that prayer request, if something in your spirit responded to last night's message, you're one of the marked ones. You're supposed to be here. But I also see the skeptics, the mockers, the people saying this is manipulation or that I'm using Jesus' name for views. To those people, I say this with all respect. You can leave. This message isn't for you. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm simply delivering what was shown to me. The marked ones will recognize truth. The rest will scroll on. And that's okay. Jesus said it would be this way. For those of you who are still here, who are hungry, who are desperate for breakthrough, let me take you back to the second night. I arrived at the trailhead at 2:30 a.m., giving myself extra time to make the hike. The rainforest was different this time. Where the first night had felt wild and alive with possibility, this night felt heavier, thicker. The air was oppressive, humid to the point of being almost difficult to breathe. Storm clouds had rolled in, obscuring the moon completely. My flashlight beams seemed dimmer, swallowed by a darkness that felt almost tangible. The sounds were different too. The coqui frogs that had sung so beautifully the night before were silent. The birds were silent. Even the constant buzz of insects had died down to almost nothing. The only sound was the distant thunder of the waterfall and the occasional rumble of actual thunder from the storm clouds overhead. As I hiked, I felt resistance. That's the only way I can describe it. Every step felt harder than it should have been. My legs were heavy. Doubts started creeping into my mind. What if last night was just my imagination? What if I'm losing my mind? What if I get to the overlook and nothing happens? What am I doing out here at 3 a.m. talking to myself? I'm sharing this because some of you are feeling this right now in your own breakthrough season. You had a moment of clarity, a moment where you knew God was moving, where you felt faith rise up in your spirit. But then the doubts came, the resistance came, the enemy started whispering that you made it all up, that you're foolish, that nothing is really going to change. That resistance, that's sign number 3. And Jesus was about to explain it to me in a way I'll never forget. I reached the overlook at 2:51 a.m. The waterfall was barely visible through the darkness and mist. The roar seemed louder, more aggressive. The stone beneath my feet was slick with moisture and algae. A wind had picked up, warm and chaotic, whipping the mist into wild patterns. I gripped the stone railing and waited. The temperature didn't drop this time. Instead, it spiked. A wave of heat washed over the overlook, intense and sudden, like standing too close to a bonfire. I could feel sweat breaking out across my back, my forehead, running down my face, mixing with the mist from the waterfall. And then he was there. Jesus appeared not beside me this time, but standing on the stone railing itself, balanced perfectly on that narrow ledge with the 300-foot drop behind him and the raging waterfall beyond. He wasn't affected by the wind that was now whipping at my clothes and hair. His robes hung perfectly still. His presence was even more intense than the first night, more urgent, more fierce. "You felt the resistance," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Lord," I answered, having to shout over the wind and water. I almost turned back. He stepped down from the railing in a single fluid motion and approached me. His eyes were different tonight. There was a holy anger in them, a righteous fury that made me take a step back. "That resistance you felt on the trail," he said, "that's what I need to expose tonight. My people are experiencing unprecedented resistance right now at the end of 2025 because the enemy knows what I'm about to do in 2026. He knows who I've marked for breakthrough, and he's throwing everything he has at them to make them quit, to make them doubt, to make them give up 3 inches from the finish line." Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the entire rainforest in stark white light for a split second. The thunder that followed was so loud I felt it in my chest. Jesus raised his hand, and the wind stopped. Completely. Instantly. The air became perfectly still. Even the waterfall seemed to quiet, as if nature itself was holding its breath to listen. "Sign number 3, he said, is spiritual resistance that intensifies right before breakthrough. My people need to understand this. When the warfare gets worse, when the attacks increase, when everything seems to fall apart at once, that's not a sign to retreat. That's a sign you're getting close. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on people who aren't a threat. He attacks those who are about to step into their purpose. He gestured to the waterfall behind him, and once again, the impossible happened. The water began to flow backward, up instead of down, against gravity, against every natural law. It rose up in a massive column, spinning, forming shapes and images in the darkness. "Watch," he commanded. In the swirling water, I saw a man in Texas. He was a businessman who'd been believing God for a breakthrough in his company. He'd been faithful, ethical, trusting God while his competitors lied and cheated their way to success. But in the past month, everything had fallen apart. His biggest client left. His business partner betrayed him. His wife was questioning whether they'd made the right choices. He was sitting in his office at that very moment, staring at bankruptcy papers, about to give up on everything he'd built. But then the image shifted. I saw angels in that office. I saw them blocking attacks. I saw them orchestrating events he couldn't see. I saw a phone call that was coming in 72 hours that would change everything, a contract bigger than anything he'd ever landed. But only if he didn't quit, only if he pushed through the resistance. "He's experiencing sign number 3, Jesus said, but he doesn't recognize it. He thinks the increased warfare means God has abandoned him. He doesn't understand that the enemy attacks hardest right before victory, because if he can make my people quit now, he wins by default." The image shifted again. I saw a young woman in Korea, a worship leader. She'd been in a season of incredible intimacy with God, experiencing his presence in powerful ways, leading her church into deep worship. But in the past 2 weeks, everything had gone dry. She couldn't feel God's presence. Worship felt empty. Prayer felt like talking to the ceiling. She was devastated, believing she'd done something wrong, that God had withdrawn from her. "Sign number 4, Jesus said, and his voice carried such tenderness now, such love. The desert before the promised land, the silence before the symphony. Moses had 40 years in the wilderness before the burning bush. David had years in caves before the throne. I had 40 days in the desert before public ministry. The season of hiddenness, of dryness, of silence. This isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's where I do my deepest work, beneath the surface where no one can see." I was weeping again. I couldn't help it, because I knew this season. I'd lived this season. The years before the chosen, when I couldn't get cast in anything, when it felt like God had forgotten me, when my prayers seemed to bounce off the ceiling. I didn't understand then that God was preparing me for something I couldn't imagine yet. "Lord," I said, my voice breaking, "how do your people push through this? How do they know the difference between a desert season that's preparation and just being in the wrong place?" He turned to me, and the column of water behind him slowly descended back into its natural pattern, the waterfall roaring back to life. "That's sign number 5, he said, and this is where most of my people miss it completely. Peace in the midst of chaos. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of unexplainable peace underneath the struggle. When someone is in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing, pursuing the wrong path, they have constant anxiety. The Holy Spirit creates friction. But when someone is in the right place, going through the right battle, enduring the right trial, there's a peace that transcends understanding. There's chaos on the surface, but stillness in the deep places. He walked to the edge of the overlook and looked out over the rainforest. Dawn was still hours away, but I could see him perfectly, as if he carried his own light. "Jonathan, look at this waterfall," he said. "What do you see?" I looked. The water was crashing with violent force, exploding on the rocks below, sending spray 50 feet into the air. It was chaos, power, intensity. "Chaos," I said. "Power, violence almost." "Look deeper," he said. I stared harder, and then I saw it. Beneath the surface of the churning pool at the base of the waterfall, there was stillness. A layer of water that wasn't moving, wasn't disturbed by the violence above it. Deep peace in the midst of surface chaos. "That's how you know," Jesus said. "That's how my people can recognize when they're in a breakthrough season versus when they're just beating their heads against the wrong door. The circumstances might be violent. The warfare might be intense. Everything on the surface might look like disaster. But if there's peace in the deep places, if they can lay their head down at night and know, despite everything, that they're exactly where they're supposed to be, that's confirmation. That's how you know you're in the right battle." Lightning flashed again, and this time the rain started, not gradually, but all at once, like someone had opened a faucet in the sky. Warm, heavy drops that soaked through my clothes in seconds. But I didn't move. I couldn't move. Jesus turned back to me, rainwater streaming down his face, and he was smiling. Sign number 6, he said, raising his voice over the sound of the rain and waterfall, is the sudden downpour after the drought. When breakthrough comes, it doesn't come as a trickle. It comes as a flood. My people have been trained to expect gradual change, slow improvement, incremental progress. But that's not how I work in miracle seasons. When the time is right, when the preparation is complete, when my people have pushed through the resistance and the desert and learned to recognize the deep peace, I open the floodgates, suddenly, dramatically, abundantly. He spread his arms wide and the rain intensified. It was coming down so hard I could barely see him standing just feet in front of me. The waterfall behind him had doubled in volume, tripled, becoming a massive wall of white water. The sound was deafening. The stone beneath my feet was now covered in flowing water as the overlook couldn't drain fast enough. This is what 2026 holds for the marked ones, he shouted, not a trickle of blessing, not incremental improvement, a flood, a deluge of answered prayers, of open doors, of divine opportunities, of healing, of restoration, of provision, of breakthrough in every area where they've been believing me. But Jonathan, most of my people won't be ready for it. Most of my people will miss their moment because they don't recognize the signs that precede the flood. In the sheeting rain, images began to form. Hundreds of them, thousands of them, faces from every nation, every background. I saw a single mother in Atlanta who was about to receive a promotion that would solve her financial crisis. I saw an elderly couple in Japan whose prodigal son was about to come home after 20 years. I saw a pastor in Brazil whose church was about to experience revival after years of faithfully serving a handful of people. I saw a teenager in Canada who was about to be healed of a disease doctors said was incurable. I saw a businessman in India whose invention was about to be noticed by someone who could bring it to the world. On and on the visions came, each one a life about to be transformed, a prayer about to be answered, a breakthrough about to manifest, and I realized I was seeing the marked ones, the people who'd pushed through the resistance, the people who'd endured the desert, the people who'd recognized the deep peace beneath the surface chaos, the people who were about to step into their flood season. These are the ones who won't scroll past your message, Jesus said, his voice cutting through everything. These are the ones who will recognize truth when they hear it because my spirit in them bears witness with my spirit in you. These are the ones who've been praying in secret, worshiping in the darkness, believing against all evidence, pushing through when everything said to quit. And these are the ones who are about to see me move in ways that will shock them, that will exceed their expectations, that will restore their faith in my goodness. The rain stopped as suddenly as it had started. The clouds began to break apart, and moonlight streamed through, illuminating the waterfall and the rainforest in silver light. Everything was dripping, glistening, alive. The air smelled like earth and flowers and rain-washed leaves. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Jesus walked toward me and placed both hands on my shoulders. His grip was firm, real, solid. Tomorrow night, he said, I'm going to show you signs 7 through 9, and I'm going to reveal the warfare that's specifically targeting the marked ones right now. I'm going to expose the lies the enemy is using to keep my people from stepping into their miracle season. What I show you will be harder to hear. It will be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. He paused, and his expression grew more serious. Jonathan, I need you to understand something. Not everyone who watches these messages wants breakthrough. Some people are comfortable in their dysfunction. Some people have built their identity around being the victim, the overlooked one, the one God doesn't bless. When breakthrough comes, they'll have to give up that identity. They'll have to step into responsibility and purpose, and that terrifies them more than staying where they are. I felt the weight of those words settle over me. Those people will attack this message, he continued. They'll call you a false prophet. They'll say you're manipulating people. They'll accuse you of using my name for personal gain. Let them. They're not your audience. The marked ones will know. The marked ones will hear my voice in your words because they're my sheep, and my sheep know my voice. He released my shoulders and stepped back. One more thing, he said. Tell them about the deadline. Tell them they have until January 16th, 2026, exactly 30 days from your first encounter with me, to position themselves for what's coming. After that date, the door of opportunity for this particular season will close. Not forever. I'm always working. But this specific window, this specific outpouring that's coming in 2026 has a threshold. Those who cross it will experience unprecedented breakthrough. Those who miss it will have to wait for another season, another cycle, another opportunity. My heart was pounding. The urgency I felt was almost unbearable. 30 days, I repeated. 30 days, he confirmed, starting from December 16th until January 16th, 2026. That's the window. That's the threshold. That's how much time the marked ones have to prepare, to position themselves, to align their lives with what I'm about to do. He began to fade then, becoming translucent in the moonlight. Tomorrow night, Jonathan, 2:47 a.m., be here. What I'm going to show you will break your heart, but it will also give you the weapons to help my people fight back. And then he was gone. I stood there as the first birds began their pre-dawn calls. The waterfall continued its eternal song, smaller now, back to normal after the rain. The stone beneath my feet was littered with leaves and small branches that had been blown down in the storm. Everything felt scrubbed clean, renewed, alive with possibility. I'm recording this message from the same overlook, but now it's daylight, late afternoon on December 17th. I came back because I needed to see this place in the light to confirm to myself that it's real, that last night actually happened, and it did. It's all real. If you're watching this, if you've made it this far, you need to ask yourself a serious question. What resistance have you been experiencing lately? What attacks? What setbacks? What sudden difficulties? Because here's what Jesus revealed to me. The enemy attacks what threatens him. If your life has been easy, if you've had no spiritual warfare, if everything has been smooth sailing, you might not be a threat. You might be exactly where the enemy wants you, comfortable and ineffective. But if you've been under attack, if the resistance has been intense, if everything seems to be falling apart, that might be sign number 3. That might be confirmation that you're on the verge of breakthrough, that the enemy knows what's coming for you in 2026, and he's doing everything he can to make you quit before you cross the threshold. I need you to do 3 things right now. First, drop a comment and tell me what resistance you've been facing. Be honest. Be specific. There's power in testimony, power in speaking out the attacks so they lose their power over you. Second, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, do it now. We have 2 more nights of revelation coming, and you cannot afford to miss them. The algorithm is already trying to suppress this content. I can see it in the numbers. But when you subscribe and engage, you're fighting back in the spiritual realm. Third, I want you to think about that image of the waterfall, chaos on the surface, peace in the deep places. Ask the Holy Spirit right now, do I have peace in the deep places? If the answer is yes, if underneath all the surface chaos there's a stillness, a knowing, a confidence that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, that's sign number 5. That's confirmation. Hold on to that. Let that be your anchor when the storms rage. We're down to 29 days until the threshold, 29 days until January 16th, 2026. I know that might sound arbitrary. I know it might sound like I'm creating false urgency, but I'm only delivering what was shown to me. Jesus was explicit. This specific season, this specific outpouring has a specific window, and the marked ones need to know. Tomorrow night, technically tonight, since I'll be returning to the waterfall at 2:47 a.m. on December 18th, Jesus is going to show me signs 7, 8, and 9. He's going to reveal the specific tactics the enemy is using against the marked ones. He's going to expose the lies that are keeping people from recognizing their miracle season. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to be intense. If you thought the first 2 nights were challenging, you haven't seen anything yet. But the marked ones won't turn away. The hungry ones won't be offended. Those who are desperate for breakthrough will lean in, will press through the discomfort, will let their comfortable theology be challenged. Are you one of them? Drop "I'm marked" in the comments if you're committed to seeing this through to the end. I need to know who's really with me. I need to know who's hungry enough to keep showing up even when it gets uncomfortable. Your miracle season is coming. The flood is coming. The breakthrough is coming. But you have to recognize the signs. You have to push through the resistance. You have to find the peace in the deep places. And you have to be ready when the rain starts to fall. I'll see you tomorrow night. Same place, same time. The waterfall is waiting, and so is your breakthrough. I'm not going to lie to you. I was afraid to go back. After the second night, after witnessing the intensity of Jesus' presence, after seeing those visions of the marked ones and feeling the weight of what's coming in 2026, I spent all of December 17th in a state of holy fear. Not the fear that makes you run away, but the fear that Moses must have felt when God told him to go back to Egypt. The fear that Isaiah felt when he saw the Lord high and lifted up. The fear of being chosen for something so much bigger than yourself that it threatens to crush you under its weight. But more than my fear was my desperation to hear more, to see more, to understand more. The comments from the first 2 nights have been overwhelming. Thousands of you sharing your resistance stories, your desert seasons, your battles, and I've been reading them, praying over them, weeping over them. Because I see the pattern Jesus showed me. I see the marked ones. I see people who are inches away from breakthrough but don't realize it. I see people who are about to give up at the 3-yard line. That's why I had to go back, no matter how afraid I was. It's now December 18th, and I'm recording this in the late afternoon from the waterfall overlook. But let me take you back to last night, the third encounter, the most intense night yet. I left my house at 2:15 a.m., earlier than before because I knew I needed extra time to prepare my heart. The drive through the rainforest was different this time. Where the first night had felt wild and the second night heavy, this third night felt electric. The air itself seemed charged with something I couldn't name. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound seemed amplified. When I reached the trailhead, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, praying, trying to steady my breathing. I could feel the spiritual warfare pressing in. Thoughts bombarded my mind. What if you're making this all up? What if you're leading people astray? What if this is your ego disguised as divine revelation? What if you're about to be exposed as a fraud? I'm sharing this because some of you are hearing those same voices right now. The accuser is working overtime to discredit what God is doing, to make you doubt what the Holy Spirit is confirming in your spirit. That's part of the warfare Jesus was about to expose. I started hiking at 2:35 a.m. The trail was darker than ever, thick clouds obscuring any hint of moonlight. My flashlight seemed weaker, the beam barely penetrating the darkness. The rainforest was alive with sounds tonight. Creatures moving through the underbrush, branches cracking, the distant roar of the waterfall mixing with something else I couldn't quite identify, a low rumble that seemed to come from the earth itself. Every step felt like walking through molasses. The resistance was back, but 10 times stronger. My legs ached, my lungs burned, even though the hike wasn't particularly strenuous. I felt like I was carrying 100 pounds on my back. Twice I almost turned around. Twice I stopped and considered going home. But each time I stopped, a scripture would flood my mind. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. Greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. I pushed forward. When I reached the overlook at 2:47 a.m. exactly, everything changed. The oppressive weight lifted instantly. The darkness seemed to pull back. And the temperature, it didn't drop this time or spike with heat. Instead, it became perfect, exactly perfect, like the Garden of Eden must have felt before the fall. Every breath was pure and sweet. The air tasted like life itself. The waterfall was magnificent tonight, more powerful than I'd ever seen it. Recent rains had swollen it to at least twice its normal size. The roar was almost overwhelming. The mist rose up like a curtain between earth and heaven. And then I saw something that made my knees buckle. There were others here, not physical people, spiritual beings, angels, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, standing around the perimeter of the overlook, facing outward like warriors on guard. They were massive, terrifying, beautiful. Some held swords of fire, some held shields that seemed to be made of crystallized light. They weren't looking at me. They were watching the darkness beyond the overlook, standing guard against something I couldn't see. And in the center of them all, standing on the same stone railing he'd stood on the second night, was Jesus. But he looked different tonight, more intense, more serious. His eyes held something that made my heart race, holy anger mixed with deep sorrow. He was dressed not in the simple robes of the previous nights, but in what I can only describe as battle armor. Not metal armor, but something that looked like light woven into fabric with what appeared to be the names of nations and peoples written across his chest. When he spoke, his voice shook the stone beneath my feet. "Jonathan, come here." I walked forward on trembling legs. When I reached him, he stepped down from the railing and placed his hand on the back of my neck, firm and commanding, turning my head to look out over the rainforest. "Look," he said, "see what I see." And my vision changed. The rainforest was suddenly transparent. I could see through the trees, through the darkness, through the physical realm into the spiritual realm, and what I saw made me gasp in horror. Demons, thousands of them, millions of them, swarming through the forest like locusts, dark and twisted and filled with hate. They were attacking anything and everything. I saw them hovering over houses, tormenting people in their sleep. I saw them whispering lies into the ears of believers, planting doubts, stirring up fear. I saw them orchestrating coincidences, failed job interviews, financial setbacks, relationship conflicts, health problems, all timed perfectly to make people give up right before their breakthrough. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was seeing how many believers were completely unaware. They were experiencing the attacks but attributing them to bad luck or God's will or their own failures. They didn't realize they were in a war. They didn't realize they were being specifically targeted because they were marked for breakthrough in 2026. Sign number 7, Jesus said, his voice heavy with grief. Satanic assignment increases exponentially in the season before breakthrough. The enemy doesn't assign his most powerful demons to those who are already defeated. He assigns them to those who are about to win. But my people have been taught that spiritual warfare is superstition, that demons are metaphors, that everything can be explained by psychology and circumstance, so they're fighting a war they don't even believe exists. He released my neck, and my vision returned to normal, though I could still sense the spiritual activity all around us. The angels standing guard made more sense now. We were in a protected space, a temporarily cleared battlefield where Jesus could speak truth without interference. Look at the waterfall, he commanded. I turned. The water had frozen mid-fall, completely frozen. Not with ice, but suspended in time like the first night, except more extensive. The entire cascade was motionless, millions of gallons held in perfect stillness by his command. Images began to appear in the suspended water, but these were darker than before, more troubling. I saw a woman in Ohio. She'd been believing God for healing from chronic illness for 3 years. She'd been faithful, prayerful, standing on scripture. But in the last month, her symptoms had intensified. She was in more pain than ever. She was beginning to believe that maybe God wanted her sick, that maybe this was her thorn in the flesh, that maybe she should just accept it and stop having faith for healing. But then the image shifted, and I saw the truth. I saw a demon that had been assigned to her specifically, a spirit of infirmity. I saw it intensifying her symptoms artificially, making things worse right before her healing was about to manifest. Her breakthrough was scheduled for January 5th, 2026. The healing was already purchased, already decreed in heaven, already on its way. But if she gave up now, if she accepted the lie that God wanted her sick, she'd miss it. She'd still be healed eventually. God's will doesn't change. But she'd miss this season, this wave, this specific moment of breakthrough. That's the strategy, Jesus said, and his voice was tight with righteous anger. Make the symptoms worse right before the healing. Make the financial crisis deeper right before the provision. Make the marriage rockier right before the restoration. The enemy knows that if he can get my people to give up right before breakthrough, he doesn't have to stop the breakthrough. He just has to delay it. And delay is as good as defeat when it comes to the specific assignments I have for people in specific seasons. The image shifted. I saw a man in Australia, a marketplace believer who'd been praying for influence in his industry. He'd been faithful, ethical, trusting God while his peers compromised. But in the last 2 weeks, he'd made a series of small mistakes, nothing major, but enough to make him doubt himself. He was beginning to believe that maybe he wasn't cut out for leadership, that maybe God wanted him to stay small, to stay safe, to stop reaching for more. But in the spiritual realm, I saw the truth. I saw demons assigned to confusion and self-doubt. I saw them orchestrating those mistakes, subtle influences, momentary distractions, perfectly timed to make him stumble. Because his promotion was coming. His breakthrough into influence was scheduled for early 2026. But if he disqualified himself now through doubt and fear, if he stepped back from the opportunities that were about to open, he'd miss the very thing he'd been praying for. Sign number 8, Jesus said. Self-disqualification through manufactured mistakes and amplified flaws. The enemy can't stop my plans, but he can convince my people that they're not worthy, not ready, not qualified for what I want to give them. So he orchestrates situations that highlight their weaknesses, amplifies their failures, makes them hyper-aware of every flaw, and my people, instead of running to my grace, instead of remembering that I use the foolish things to shame the wise, instead of understanding that I specialize in using cracked vessels, they disqualify themselves. They step back, they hide, they decline the invitation to breakthrough because they don't feel ready. I was shaking now, not from cold, but from the intensity of what I was seeing, because I recognized this pattern. I'd lived it. How many opportunities had I declined because I didn't feel worthy? How many times had I self-sabotaged right before breakthrough because I was convinced I wasn't good enough? Lord, I said, my voice barely audible over the roar of the waterfall, how do your people fight this? How do they recognize the warfare when it's so subtle, so personal? He turned to face me fully, and the sorrow in his eyes was almost unbearable. That's sign number 9, he said, and this is the one that breaks my heart the most. Isolation. In the season right before breakthrough, the enemy works overtime to isolate my people from community, from accountability, from truth speakers. He makes them feel misunderstood, unsupported, alone. He makes them believe that no one understands their struggle, that no one else is going through what they're going through, that they have to fight alone. The frozen waterfall suddenly came alive again, but instead of falling downward, it began to swirl in a massive spiral, creating a vortex. In the center of the vortex, I saw image after image of isolated believers. A pastor in his office, surrounded by people but completely alone, feeling like he couldn't share his struggles because he was supposed to be strong for everyone else. A worship leader in her car after practice, weeping, feeling like God had withdrawn, too ashamed to tell anyone she was struggling. A businessman in his study, staring at financial reports, too proud to ask for prayer or help. A mother at her kitchen table at 3 a.m., overwhelmed and exhausted, believing she was failing at everything, with no one to encourage her. A teenager in his bedroom, battling thoughts of worthlessness, convinced no one would understand if he spoke up. On and on the images came, hundreds of them, thousands of them, all marked ones, all on the verge of breakthrough, all isolated and struggling alone. This is the enemy's masterpiece, Jesus said, his voice thick with emotion. He can't stop my plans, so he isolates my people so they can't encourage each other, can't speak truth to each other, can't remind each other that they're not alone. Because when my people are isolated, they only hear one voice, the accusers. They forget the promises. They forget the prophecies. They forget that others have walked this path and survived. They forget that they're part of a body, not lone warriors. The vortex of water collapsed back into a normal waterfall, the roar returning to its usual rhythm. Jesus walked to the edge of the overlook and gestured for me to join him. "Jonathan, look down," he said. I looked over the edge. The pool at the base of the waterfall, 300 feet below, was glowing. Not with moonlight, there was no moon tonight. It was glowing with its own light, golden and warm and inviting. That pool represents 2026, Jesus said. It represents the flood of breakthrough, the miracle season that's coming. Everyone who's been marked, everyone who's been in preparation, everyone who's been fighting through the resistance and the desert and the warfare, they're about to jump. They're about to take a leap of faith that looks crazy to outside observers. They're about to step into things they've been preparing for, often without realizing they were preparing. He paused, letting me absorb the image. But here's what most people don't understand about leaps of faith, he continued. You don't jump alone. That's why the enemy works so hard to isolate you. Because when you're connected to community, when you have truth speakers in your life, when you're vulnerable about your struggles, others jump with you. Or they've jumped before you and can tell you the water is safe. Or they hold the rope while you descend. But when you're isolated, the jump looks impossible. The fear becomes overwhelming, and you stay on the cliff watching others jump, never stepping into your own breakthrough. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the first drops of rain began to fall. But this rain was different. It was warm, almost hot, and when the drops hit my skin, they felt like oil. Anointing oil. The third night, revelations are always the hardest, Jesus said, raising his voice as the rain intensified. Because this is where I expose the darkest tactics, the most painful truths, the warfare that most believers don't want to acknowledge. But those who can receive this truth, those who can look at the battlefield honestly and recognize the strategies being used against them, they're the ones who will break through. They're the ones who will jump into 2026 prepared, aware, armored up, and ready for war. The angels around the perimeter of the overlook suddenly drew their weapons. I spun around, alarmed, but Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder. They're not responding to a threat here, he said. They're responding to what's about to happen, because every person watching your message right now, who receives this truth, who recognizes the warfare in their own life, who chooses to break isolation and connect with community, they're about to be attacked harder than ever. The enemy is going to try to discredit this message, to plant doubts, to stir up offense, and these angels are being deployed to protect the marked ones, to guard them through the next 11 days until the breakthrough threshold. He turned me to face him, both hands on my shoulders now, his eyes boring into mine. "Tomorrow night is the final encounter," he said. I'm going to show you signs 10, 11, and 12. I'm going to give you the practical steps, the actual battle plan for how my people can position themselves for breakthrough. But Jonathan, you need to understand something. The final night is going to be the most controversial. What I'm going to tell you will offend religious people. It will challenge comfortable Christianity. It will require the marked ones to do things that seem foolish, that defy conventional wisdom, that make them vulnerable. He paused, making sure I was absorbing every word. Some people will turn away tomorrow night. Some people will call you a heretic. Some people will say you've gone too far, that you've crossed a line. Let them. The marked ones will hear my voice. The hungry ones will recognize truth. The desperate ones will do whatever it takes to position themselves for breakthrough, even if it costs them their pride, their reputation, their comfortable spiritual life. The rain intensified until it was coming down in sheets, soaking through everything, warm and thick like oil. The angels were glowing now, their armor blazing with light. The waterfall behind Jesus was roaring louder than ever, drowning out every other sound. 11 days, Jonathan, he shouted over the storm. 11 days until January 16th, 2026. 11 days until the threshold. Every person who's made it this far in your message, every person who's watched all 3 nights, they're marked, they're chosen, they're called, but they have to make a choice. They have to decide if they're willing to do what it takes to cross the threshold. He released my shoulders and stepped back, beginning to fade. Tomorrow night, 2:47 a.m., final encounter. Come ready, Jonathan. Come prepared, because what I show you will equip the marked ones with everything they need to step into the greatest season of their lives. Wait, I called out. Lord, what should I tell them to do right now? How should they prepare for tomorrow night? He was almost completely gone, just an outline in the rain and mist, but his voice came through clear and strong. Tell them to break isolation today. Tell them to reach out to at least one person and share their struggle, their resistance, their battle. Tell them to stop fighting alone, and tell them to get on their face before me and ask for one thing. Lord, give me eyes to see the warfare. Give me discernment to recognize the tactics. Give me courage to stand when everything says to run. Those who pray that prayer before tomorrow night will be ready for what I'm about to reveal. And then he was gone. The rain stopped instantly. The clouds broke apart, and dawn light began to creep over the horizon. I'd been there longer than I realized. The angels faded from view, but I could still sense their presence. The waterfall returned to its normal flow, beautiful and powerful and eternal. I stayed there for another hour, watching the sunrise, praying, trying to process everything I'd seen. Now I'm here in the daylight, recording this, and I need you to hear me clearly. If you've made it this far, if you've watched all 3 nights, you're marked, period. You wouldn't have been able to sit through these messages if the Holy Spirit wasn't confirming truth in your spirit. The religious folks would have left after night 1. The comfortable Christians would have been offended by night 2. The fact that you're still here means something, but now you have a choice to make. You can take what you've learned and go back to fighting alone, or you can do what Jesus commanded, break isolation today. I want you to do 3 things right now. First, identify one person, a trusted friend, a mentor, a pastor, a family member, someone, and share your struggle with them. Tell them about the resistance you've been facing. Tell them about the warfare. Tell them about the desert season. Stop pretending you have it all together. Break isolation today. Second, get on your face before Jesus, literally, physically, face down, and pray that prayer. Lord, give me eyes to see the warfare. Give me discernment to recognize the tactics. Give me courage to stand when everything says to run. Don't rush it. Don't pray it casually. This is a serious prayer that invites serious revelation. Third, drop a comment right now. I break isolation. That's it. Just those 3 words. Because when you declare it publicly, when you speak it out, you're breaking a spiritual stronghold. You're announcing to the enemy that you're done fighting alone, and you're signaling to other marked ones that you're part of the army. We have 11 days until the threshold, 11 days until January 16th, 2026. Tomorrow night, the final encounter, Jesus is going to give us the battle plan. He's going to reveal signs 10, 11, and 12. He's going to show us exactly how to position ourselves for the flood of breakthrough that's coming. But you have to prepare. You have to break isolation. You have to pray for eyes to see. The comfortable Christians won't do it. The religious folks won't do it. The lukewarm believers won't do it, but the marked ones will. Are you marked? I'm sitting here at the waterfall overlook as the sun sets on December 18th, 2025, and I'm trying to find the words to describe what happened last night, or rather, early this morning on what became the fourth encounter. I say fourth because what Jesus had planned was so extensive, so detailed, so comprehensive that the third night couldn't contain it all. He met me again at 2:47 a.m. this morning, December 19th, and what he revealed in those hours has left me undone, transformed, and carrying a message that I know will divide audiences. But before I take you back to that final encounter, I need to address what's been happening in the comments. Thousands of you have declared, "I break isolation." Thousands of you have shared your stories of reaching out, of getting real with others, of stopping the lonely fight. And I've been reading messages from people saying that within hours of breaking isolation, within hours, breakthroughs started happening. Unexpected phone calls, divine appointments, sudden shifts in situations that had been stuck for months or years. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. That's Jesus moving in response to obedience. But I've also seen the attacks. I've seen the comments calling me a false prophet, a manipulator, a charlatan using Jesus' name for views and money. I've seen people mocking the urgency, questioning the January 16th deadline, accusing me of creating false pressure. To those people, I say with all respect, you're not my audience. Jesus told me you'd come. He told me the comfortable would be offended. He told me the religious would resist. And he told me not to waste energy defending myself to those who've already made up their minds, but to the marked ones, to those of you who felt the witness of the Holy Spirit in these messages, who've recognized your own story in the visions, who've experienced the confirmation that comes from truth. This final message is for you. Let me take you back to the fourth and final encounter. I arrived at the trailhead at 2:30 a.m. on December 19th. The rainforest was calm tonight. No oppressive darkness, no heavy resistance, no spiritual warfare pressing in. The path was clear. The moon was full and bright, illuminating the trail without need for my flashlight. The air was perfect, cool and clean, and filled with the scent of night-blooming jasmine. It felt like walking through the Garden of Eden. When I reached the overlook at 2:45 a.m., 2 minutes early, Jesus was already there. He wasn't standing on the railing this time, wasn't in battle armor. He was sitting on the stone ledge with his feet dangling over the edge, looking completely relaxed, almost casual. He was dressed in simple robes again, and when he saw me, he smiled. That smile undid me completely. It was pure joy, pure love, pure pride, like a father watching his child accomplish something difficult. "You came back," he said. "Of course I came back," I replied, walking toward him. "Lord, I would walk through fire to hear what you have to say." "I know," he said. "That's why I chose you. Not because you're perfect, not because you have it all figured out, but because you're hungry, because you're willing, because when I speak, you listen." He patted the stone beside him. "Sit." I sat, my legs dangling over the 300-foot drop, the waterfall roaring to our right, the full moon casting everything in silver light. It was the most surreal, most beautiful moment of my life. "Tonight is different," Jesus said, looking out over the moonlit rainforest. "The first 3 nights were about revelation, showing you the warfare, exposing the tactics, helping you recognize the signs. But tonight is about activation. Tonight I'm going to give you and everyone watching the practical steps, the actual battle plan for crossing the threshold into miracle season." He turned to look at me, and his eyes held something I hadn't seen before. Anticipation, excitement, holy eagerness. "Jonathan, everything I've shown you over these past 4 nights has been leading to this moment. The marked ones have been identified. The warfare has been exposed. Isolation has been broken. Now it's time to position them for breakthrough. But I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you will seem too simple to some people. They'll be expecting complicated formulas, elaborate rituals, secret knowledge, but the kingdom doesn't work that way. The greatest power is often released through the simplest obedience." He stood and walked to the center of the overlook. As he did, the waterfall began to respond, not freezing this time, not flowing backward, but splitting into 12 distinct streams, 12 separate cascades, each one flowing independently, each one glowing with a different color. 12 signs, he said. "I promised you 12 signs that someone is about to enter their miracle season. You've seen 9. Now I'm going to show you the final 3, and then I'm going to tell you exactly how to position yourself to receive everything I have for you in 2026. He pointed to the 10th stream, glowing deep purple. Sign number 10, divine dissatisfaction with the status quo. When someone is about to enter miracle season, they become increasingly unable to tolerate mediocrity, compromise, or spiritual lukewarmness. Things they used to accept, they can no longer accept. Church services that used to satisfy them now leave them hungry. Relationships that used to be enough now feel draining. Jobs that used to be tolerable now feel like prisons. This isn't complaining. This isn't ingratitude. This is holy dissatisfaction, God making them too big for their current container because He's about to give them a larger one. Images appeared in the purple stream. I saw a woman walking out of a church service, tears streaming down her face, not because it was bad, but because it wasn't enough anymore. I saw a man staring at his office cubicle, successful by every worldly measure, but feeling like he was dying inside because God had put eternity in his heart, and he could no longer settle for temporal achievement. I saw a young person closing their laptop after scrolling through social media, feeling the emptiness of comparison and curated lives, desperately hungry for something real. The marked ones are experiencing this right now, Jesus said. They're being accused of being critical, unsatisfied, always wanting more. But that dissatisfaction isn't a character flaw. It's a divine setup. I'm making them hungry for what I'm about to release. I'm stretching their capacity for what's coming. He moved to the 11th stream, glowing brilliant gold. Sign number 11, supernatural downloads of strategy and vision. In the weeks and months before miracle season, my people start receiving dreams, visions, ideas, and strategies that seem to come from nowhere. They wake up with solutions to problems they've been struggling with for years. They have sudden clarity about direction. They receive business ideas, ministry concepts, creative inspiration, downloads of wisdom that could only come from my spirit. But here's where most people miss it. They receive the download, they get excited for a day or two, and then they do nothing with it. They don't write it down, they don't take action, they don't test the strategy. So the download gets buried under daily life and the opportunity passes. The golden stream showed me image after image. A musician receiving a melody at 3 a.m., but going back to sleep instead of recording it. An entrepreneur having a breakthrough idea in the shower but talking themselves out of it by the time they're dressed. A pastor receiving a vision for ministry but never sharing it with leadership because they're afraid of looking foolish. The marked ones have been receiving downloads, Jesus continued, but most of them haven't taken action. They're waiting for confirmation, waiting to feel ready, waiting for perfect conditions, but the downloads are the confirmation. The ideas are the invitation, and if they don't act on them soon, the window will close. He moved to the 12th and final stream, glowing pure white, brighter than all the others. Sign number 12, encounters with my presence that ruin you for ordinary Christianity. When someone is about to enter miracle season, I increase the intensity of their personal encounters with me. I meet them in prayer in ways they've never experienced. I speak to them through scripture with sudden clarity and precision. I show up in their worship. I visit them in dreams. I manifest in their ordinary moments. And these encounters ruin them. They can't go back to playing church. They can't go back to religious activity without presence. They can't go back to knowing about me instead of knowing me. This is the final sign, and it's the most important one because breakthrough doesn't come from information. It comes from intimacy. The white stream showed me what I can only describe as a montage of encounters. A teenager on their bedroom floor, overwhelmed by the presence of God during worship. An elderly woman in her garden receiving a visitation while pruning roses. A businessman in an airport chapel meeting Jesus in a way that changed his entire life trajectory. A mother nursing her baby at 2 a.m., experiencing the Father's love in a way that healed childhood wounds she'd carried for decades. You're experiencing sign 12 right now, Jesus said, turning to look at me. These 4 nights at the waterfall, this is your encounter that's ruining you for ordinary Christianity. You'll never be the same. You'll never be able to pretend. You'll never be able to settle for religion without relationship. And everyone watching who is truly engaged with these messages, they're experiencing it too. They're being encountered, they're being marked, they're being ruined for the ordinary. All 12 streams of the waterfall suddenly merged back into one, and the single cascade became like a door, a liquid portal glowing with all 12 colors swirling together. That's the threshold, Jesus said, pointing to the waterfall door. That's January 16th, 2026. That's the entry point into miracle season. And Jonathan, I'm going to tell you exactly how my people crossed through it. He walked back to where I was sitting and knelt in front of me, eye to eye, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his irises, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. For the next 28 days, from now until January 16th, I'm calling the marked ones to a daily rhythm that will position them for breakthrough. Not a complicated formula, not a religious checklist, but 3 simple, powerful practices that will align them with what I'm doing. He held up one finger. First, 30 minutes of consecrated time with me every single day, not distracted time, not multitasking time. 30 minutes where they turn off their phone, close the door, remove every distraction, and do 3 things. 10 minutes of worship, singing, speaking, declaring my goodness. 10 minutes of scripture, reading my word slowly, listening for my voice in it. 10 minutes of silence, no talking, no asking, just sitting in my presence and letting me speak, letting me minister, letting me love them. He held up a second finger. Second, daily declaration of specific breakthrough. I want them to write down the 3 biggest areas where they're believing for breakthrough: healing, provision, relationship, calling, whatever. And every single day, they're going to speak life over those areas, not begging, not pleading, but declaring what I've already promised. My healing is coming. My provision is coming. My breakthrough is coming. Speak it out loud. Let the enemy hear it. Let the atmosphere hear it. Let their own faith hear it. Words create reality in the spiritual realm. He held up a third finger. Third, intentional community connection. At least 3 times a week, they need to connect with other believers, not casually, but intentionally. Share the journey, share the struggle, share the victories. Pray together, encourage each other, fight together. The isolated believer is a defeated believer, but the connected believer, even in a community of 2 or 3, is dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. He lowered his hands and placed them on my shoulders. That's it, Jonathan. That's the battle plan. 30 minutes daily with me. Daily declaration of breakthrough, 3 times weekly intentional community. Do this for 28 days, and on January 16th, when they step through that threshold, they'll be positioned to receive everything I've prepared for them. Lord, I said, my voice shaking, it seems too simple. People are expecting something more dramatic. He smiled. Moses lifted a staff. The walls of Jericho fell to shouting. Naaman dipped in a river. The greatest breakthroughs often come through the simplest obedience. The question is never whether the instruction is impressive. The question is whether my people will actually do it. He stood and pulled me to my feet. Now, the warning, he said, and his expression grew serious. Not everyone who starts this 28-day journey will finish it. The enemy will throw everything at them to break the rhythm. They'll have legitimate excuses: sick kids, work emergencies, unavoidable obligations, and some of those will be real, but most of them will be warfare designed to keep them from crossing the threshold. So they have to decide now, today, that no matter what, they're going to complete these 28 days. They have to decide that their breakthrough is worth 30 minutes a day, worth speaking declarations even when they don't feel like it, worth reaching out to community even when they want to isolate. The sun was beginning to rise now, the first rays of light painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The waterfall door was still glowing, still swirling with all 12 colors, still waiting. There's one more thing, Jesus said, walking toward the glowing waterfall. I want to show you what's waiting on the other side. I want to show you what 2026 holds for those who cross the threshold. He reached out and touched the water, and the entire cascade became like a movie screen, images flooding across its surface faster than I could fully process. I saw healing, people rising from wheelchairs, cancer disappearing from scans, mental illness breaking, addiction snapping, bodies restored to full function. I saw provision, bank accounts suddenly filled, debts wiped out, jobs offered, businesses exploding with growth, unexpected inheritances, miraculous multiplication. I saw relationships restored, prodigal children coming home, marriages healed, friendships rekindled, family members reconciled after decades of estrangement. I saw callings activated, people stepping into ministries they'd dreamed about for years, books being published, platforms being given, influence expanding, doors opening that no man could shut. I saw creative breakthroughs, songs written, paintings created, businesses launched, inventions completed, solutions to impossible problems suddenly becoming clear. I saw spiritual awakening, revivals breaking out, whole communities turning to God, hardened hearts softening, scales falling from blind eyes, the kingdom advancing in power. On and on the visions came, a tidal wave of breakthrough, a flood of answered prayer, a deluge of divine intervention in every area of life imaginable. This is what's coming, Jesus said, his voice filled with joy and authority. This is what's waiting on the other side of the threshold. This is 2026 for the marked ones who position themselves to receive it, not a trickle, not incremental improvement, a flood, an avalanche, an overwhelming abundance of everything I've promised. The images faded, and the waterfall returned to normal, its roar filling the air, the mist catching the early morning light and creating rainbows. Jesus turned back to me one final time. Jonathan, some people are going to say you're creating false hope. They're going to say you're setting people up for disappointment. They're going to say that not everyone will experience this level of breakthrough, that you're being irresponsible by making promises you can't keep. He paused, letting that sink in. Here's what you tell them. I'm not making promises. Jesus is. These aren't Jonathan's words. They're mine. And I never promise what I don't intend to deliver. But here's the key that the religious miss. My promises are conditional on positioning. The rain falls on everyone, but only those who put out buckets collect water. The breakthrough is coming like a flood, but only those who position themselves will receive it. It's not about earning it, it's about positioning for it, and that positioning requires these 28 days of intentional alignment with what I'm doing. He began to fade then, slowly, like mist dissolving in sunlight. This is the last time I'll appear to you at this waterfall, Jonathan. But it's not the last time I'll speak to you. Continue to seek me, continue to listen, continue to deliver what I give you, no matter the cost. The marked ones are counting on you. The breakthrough generation is counting on you. Don't let the voices of critics and skeptics cause you to draw back. You've been commissioned, you've been sent. Now, complete the assignment. I will, Lord, I said, tears streaming down my face. I promise I will. I know, he said, his voice barely a whisper now. That's why I chose you. And then he was gone. I've been sitting here at this waterfall overlook all day. It's now 6:47 p.m. on December 19th, 2025. I watched the sun rise this morning after the encounter. I've watched the tourists come and go, completely unaware of what happened on this very spot just hours ago. I've prayed, I've worshipped, I've wept, I've laughed. I've been on an emotional and spiritual roller coaster that I'm still trying to process. But now I need to speak directly to you, to the marked ones who've made it through all 4 nights of this journey. You have a choice to make right now, not tomorrow, not after you think about it, right now. You can take what you've heard and do nothing with it. You can be inspired for a day or two and then let life carry you back to the status quo. You can add this to your collection of spiritual content consumed but not applied. Or you can make a decision that changes everything. Here's what I'm asking you to do. First, commit to the 28-day battle plan starting today, December 19th to January 16th, 2026. 28 days of 30 minutes daily with Jesus, 10 worship, 10 scripture, 10 silence, daily declaration of breakthrough in your 3 specific areas, 3 times weekly intentional community connection. Write it down. Put it in your phone. Make it non-negotiable. Treat it like a divine appointment, because that's exactly what it is. Second, right now, in the comments, declare your 3 breakthrough areas. Be specific. I'm believing God for healing in my body. I'm believing God for $50,000 to pay off debt. I'm believing God for my marriage to be restored. I'm believing God to activate my calling as a teacher. Whatever your 3 areas are, declare them publicly. There's power in public declaration. It creates accountability. It invites agreement. It announces to the spiritual realm that you're serious. Third, identify your community connections. Who are the 2 or 3 people you're going to intentionally connect with 3 times a week? Text them right now. Call them right now. Tell them what you're doing. Ask them to walk this 28-day journey with you. Don't wait. Don't overthink it. Do it now. Fourth, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and turn on notifications. I'm going to be posting weekly check-ins over these next 4 weeks. I'm going to be sharing testimonies from others who are on this journey. I'm going to be providing encouragement when the warfare intensifies, because it will. The enemy is not going to let the marked ones walk into breakthrough without a fight. Now I need to address the elephant in the room. What happens if you do all of this and you don't see breakthrough by January 16th? Here's the truth. God's timing is perfect, but it's not always predictable. The January 16th threshold is real. Jesus was explicit about it, but breakthrough doesn't always look like we expect it to look. Sometimes the breakthrough is internal before it's external. Sometimes the breakthrough is in our positioning, our perspective, our readiness, and the external manifestation comes later. But here's what I know with absolute certainty. If you complete these 28 days, you will not be the same person on January 16th that you are today. You will have encountered Jesus in deeper ways. You will have built spiritual muscle. You will have broken patterns of isolation and inconsistency. You will have positioned yourself in the path of blessing. And even if the breakthrough doesn't manifest in your timing, you'll be ready when it does come. And this isn't about manipulation. This isn't about false promises. This is about positioning. This is about alignment. This is about saying yes to what God is doing and stepping into the river of His activity. I also want to speak to those of you who are feeling fear right now. Fear that you'll fail, fear that you'll start strong and fade, fear that you're not disciplined enough, not spiritual enough, not worthy enough. Listen to me. Jesus didn't choose you because you're perfect. He chose you because you're hungry. The fact that you've made it through all 4 nights of this message proves that you have what it takes. The Holy Spirit doesn't waste time on people who aren't ready. If He's drawn you here, He'll empower you to complete what He's started. And for those of you experiencing doubt, wondering if this is really Jesus, really legitimate, really worth the risk, I can't make you believe. I can only tell you what I experienced. I can only deliver the message I was given. You have to ask the Holy Spirit for confirmation. Get alone with God and ask Him directly, is this from you? Are these messages true? Am I marked for breakthrough? And then listen. If it's not from God, He'll make that clear. But if it is from God, He'll confirm it in ways you can't deny. Before I close, I want to paint you a picture of what January 16th, 2026 could look like for you. Imagine waking up that morning after 28 days of consistent intimacy with Jesus. Imagine the transformation in your prayer life, your worship, your ability to hear His voice. Imagine the shift in your faith after speaking declarations over your breakthrough areas for 28 consecutive days. Imagine the strength you've gained from intentional community, from not fighting alone anymore. Now imagine stepping through that threshold, not metaphorically but spiritually. Imagine stepping into a season where the prayers you've been praying for years suddenly start getting answered, where doors you've been knocking on suddenly swing open, where healing you've been believing for suddenly manifests, where provision you've been trusting God for suddenly shows up, where relationships you've been interceding for suddenly restore, where callings you've been preparing for suddenly activate. That's not fantasy. That's not wishful thinking. That's the flood of breakthrough that Jesus showed me is coming for the marked ones who position themselves to receive it. 28 days from today, 4 weeks, less than a month. You can spend that time scrolling social media, binge-watching shows, and living on autopilot. Or you can spend it positioning yourself for the greatest season of your life. The choice is yours, but choose today. Because every day you delay is one less day of positioning. Every day you hesitate is one more day the enemy gains ground. Every day you put it off is one more day you risk missing the threshold. I'm going to close with this final image. It's early morning, December 19th, 2025. I'm standing at a waterfall overlook in a rainforest in Puerto Rico. The sun is rising behind me, painting everything in gold and pink. The waterfall in front of me has become a door, a glowing, swirling, 12-colored portal representing the threshold into miracle season. And Jesus is standing in front of that door, His hand extended toward me, His face full of love and expectation and holy eagerness. He's not forcing me. He's not manipulating me. He's simply inviting me to step through, inviting me to cross the threshold, inviting me to enter the season He's prepared. But I can't step through unless I take His hand. I can't cross unless I move toward Him. I can't enter unless I position myself at the door. That same invitation is extended to you right now. Jesus is standing at the threshold of your breakthrough season, hand extended, waiting for you to take it, waiting for you to commit to these 28 days, waiting for you to position yourself, waiting for you to step through. Will you take His hand? Will you commit to the journey? Will you cross the threshold? Drop "I'm crossing the threshold" in the comments right now if you're saying yes, if you're committing to these 28 days, if you're positioning yourself for breakthrough, if you're done with ordinary Christianity and you're ready for the flood. I'll see you in the weekly check-ins. I'll be praying for you. I'll be believing with you. I'll be watching for your testimony on January 16th, 2026. The waterfall is waiting. Jesus is waiting. Your miracle season is waiting. It's time to cross the threshold.